After September 11th, the NSA began to eavesdrop, wiretap Americans without court approval. That has now stopped. You need approval by the FISA courts, Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Administrative Courts. How many Americans were eavesdropped on after September 11th?
I can't get into the specific numbers, but I can tell you that every aspect of that program has now been briefed to every member of the House and Senate Intelligence Committee and the House and Senate Judiciary Committees. And to make sure everyone understands precisely what we're talking about here, because again, there's kind of casual use of language. You didn't use it, and I appreciate it, but a lot of folks have called it domestic spying, domestic eavesdropping. In every case, these were international calls.
Was it hundreds or thousands?
No, I won't get into the numbers, Tim, but I think if I were able to, I think the numbers would cause you less alarm.
Were any mistakes made?
How do you mean?
Did you go too far? Were innocent people targeted?
That's a great question, and it brings up the whole purpose of intelligence, all right? Intelligence isn't about guilt or innocence. Intelligence is about learning things that can protect the American people. So that, for example, if you're to go up on an intercept, on a communications path, on a communicant, and you cover that communicant, and after 30 or 45 days, you haven't found anything of interest, okay? That doesn't say anything about the innocence of anybody. It may say an awful lot about their operational security.
Let me turn to Iran. In 2007, November, the National Intelligence Estimate came out, and this is what it concluded. We assess with high confidence that until fall 2003, Iranian military entities were working under government direction to develop nuclear weapons. We judge with high confidence that the halt lasted at least several years. We assess with moderate confidence Tehran has not restarted its nuclear weapons program as of mid-2007, but we do not know whether it currently intends to develop nuclear weapons. Is that still operative?
Yes, it is. I mean, we stand by the judgment. It's a very difficult judgment. It was complex judgment, too, and it's one that, unfortunately, tends to get oversimplified in public discourse. I mean, another part of the report that we emphasized is that program that stopped in 2003. It was clearly they were weaponizing and building the actual device. It remains a program that the Iranians continue to deny ever existed. And the other aspects of the Iranian nuclear effort, beyond the weaponization, the development of fissile material, the development of delivery systems, all continue apace.
Do you believe the Iranians are trying to develop a nuclear program?
Personal belief, yes. All right? It's hard for me to explain, and you know, this is not court of law stuff. This is you know, in terms of beyond all reasonable doubt. This is Mike Hayden looking at the body of evidence. Okay. Why would the Iranians be willing to pay the international tariff they appear to be willing to pay for what they're doing now if they did not have, at a minimum, they did not have a desire to keep the option open to develop a nuclear weapon, and perhaps even more so that they've already decided to do that. It's very difficult for us to judge intent, but so we have to work back from actions. Why the continuing production of fissile material at Natanz? They say it's for civilian purposes, and yet the planet, the globe, states around the world have offered them fissile material under control so they can have their civilian nuclear program, but the Iranians have rejected that. I mean, when you start looking at that, and you get not just the United States, but you get the UN Security Council imposing sanctions on them, why would they go through that if it were not to develop the technology that would allow them to create fissile material not under international control?
I can hear a lot of viewers asking, well, then why did Saddam Hussein not cooperate more fully if he, in fact, did not have weapons of mass destruction? Sometimes people behave in strange ways that you don't understand.
No, I understand, but again, you've asked me for an assessment. You've asked me, and I can only work from the facts that I see. In Saddam's case, he had a nuclear weapons program. He had a weapons of mass destruction program. He stopped it, but in almost as a deathbed confession, he tells us that he continued to maintain the illusion because he wanted the world, or at least the neighborhood, to think that he still had these weapons.
Do you believe that the world, and many in the United States, would be suspect if the United States government came forward and said, we now believe Iran has a nuclear program based on our experience with weapons of mass destruction in Iraq?
my community, and that judgment would be based on the work of my community, has additional burdens to carry because of the Iraq NIE, in which we got so much of that estimate wrong.
50% of the analysts at the CIA have been hired since September 11th.
That's right.
That's extraordinary turnover.
And it's not turnover, it's addition. It's expansion. Right? 2007, and we chart this because this is a very important matter for us, just in the management of the agency, not just for today, but over the long term. And the portion of our workforce that has 5 or fewer years experience has been growing through 2007. In 2008, it will be the first year in which it will not be growing. And the portion of our workforce that now will begin to expand is the 5 to 15-year group, which is actually the group you really want to have strength in. Those are your shop stewards and floor bosses. You
also made a decision a few weeks ago to provide insurance to about 2/3 of your employees. Yeah. Explain that. Yeah, this is liability insurance. It's not all that expensive, but the private providers do pay for lawyers and damage claims against our officers who are called into court because of questions about what they've done in performance of their duties. I felt that was absolutely essential to do. And let me make a point here, Tim, because I think it's very important as to what this is not and what it is. What it is not is looking backwards, as some people have suggested, and trying to cover alleged sins or crimes in 2003, 2004, like any insurance policy. You can't buy it in 2008 and have it cover things that went on before. It's not retroactive. It's not. It's looking forward. And here's the issue. And actually, it's one of the reasons I'm here, is that the public discourse about CIA and CIA activities has become incredibly caustic. And there are real people, as I said before, friends and neighbors, very patriotic people who comprise the workforce of the Central Intelligence Agency. And activities of the agency have been subject to, I think, some unfair, unbalanced criticisms, even though the activities of the agency have been lawful and have been based on opinions coming out of the Department of Justice. The last thing I need as director is to have a CIA officer, when I go and tell him to do something in the shadows, and point out to him that it is perfectly lawful, that the Department of Justice has reviewed it, our lawyers have reviewed it, it's lawful, justice says it's okay, and it's clear on its face that it will help protect the nation. I do not need that officer handicapping what he thinks the next set of election results might be. I need him to have confidence in that DOJ opinion. I can't have that officer weighing in his mind, this could become an issue later, and beginning to balance his kid's college tuition account with his doing his lawful duty to defend the Republic. So I'm taking that off the table. We're going to pay for that. We're going to give people this insurance policy so that they can focus on doing their lawful duty. General Michael Hayden, we thank you very much for coming and sharing your views on behalf of the Central Intelligence Agency. And we hope you come back.
Thanks very much.
Thanks, General.